Welcome to Leadership to Go. My name is Pari Namazie. I am an executive and leadership coach and the managing partner at UNEPA. Join me as I explore leadership insights from all walks of life.
Dr. Silke Maurer, who is, I'll tell you the history of Silke and I in a minute, but Silke, welcome.
Thank you very much, Pari. Nice to talk to you.
And Silke, you and I have known each other for a few years. We actually met on a coaching journey many years ago, and we have kept in touch and had lovely conversations throughout the years. So I'm really very honored to have you on Leadership to Go. And Leadership to Go is a platform to share leadership stories and learn from one another. So it's really an honor to have you today. And just sharing a little of Silke's background. Silke comes with 25 years experience. 20 of those years have been in leadership. She has a passion for working with people and finding the right talent and putting them in the right position, and a very, very diverse background. So you hold a Ph.D. in industrial engineering. So you come, as you say, you're an engineer by background, and you have had a very, very rich background working in BMW, Rolls-Royce, to BSH Home Appliances, and of course a few in between. But now you're working in MTU Aero engines. You are the COO there and a member of the executive board. In addition, you're also a supervisory board member for Bilfinger SE. So again, very, very warm welcome, Silke.
Thank you very much.
I love asking that question. How does it feel when you hear all these rich things about your background?
Oh, I would say it's still a little bit of a surprise. Oh, wow, that's me. Oh my God. And I'm so old. No, I'm sometimes really surprised of what I already did because time seems to fly. And it makes me also humble because I was very, very lucky in my career and a little bit proud too.
And you should be very proud. And of course, I know you, so I'm a little biased. I know you to also be a very humble and a very generous and a very giving leader. Tell me, was this always what you wanted to do? Like, did you, how did you get that leadership?
Well, I would say by chance, but that's not quite true. You know, when I studied mechanical engineering, I was surrounded by all these brilliant technical geniuses, and I felt like, oh wow, I think I'm not quite a good engineer. But what I was good at was doing concepts, doing strategies, finding people to implement them, organizing parties, but also being in the students' council and so on. And I was always joking when I was looking at all those geniuses doing impressive calculations. I was like, I think I need to become a manager because, quite frankly, I'm not capable of doing all those technical work. And somehow I ended up doing so. And but it wasn't that I said, I need to become a manager, or like a lot of my colleagues, they were like, I want to be in senior management in 10 years. We were talking mid-90s here, where there was still this yuppie spirit, and I didn't have that. I just had a lot of people who trusted in my capabilities and abilities as a leader and promoted me.
Is there, sometimes when we look at our journey, is there a moment that you can, that stands out for you? Is there a person who mentored you or who was a role model to you?
I was really lucky to have very good role models being my bosses. So not too far away, but having them in my daily life. And I think the person I most appreciated was actually my first boss in BMW. Christoph, if he's looking at that, hello. Because he was the first one where I felt he was really looking at people and trying to understand what their capabilities are, where they should move in the next step. And he was very much into, how do I develop this person? And that's something that influenced me a lot. And he was also the first person who said, well, it might be a risk to take you on your first leadership position because you're still quite young, but let's just give it a try. And that was really powerful moment, I would say.
Wow. And I'm sure also scary.
Yes, of course. Of
Yeah.
course. It was a good mix of being scared and, yes, finally I can lead people how I want to be led. And that was the biggest mistake that you can do. But I learned a lot from that.
What was the mistake?
I think leadership is something that needs to be really individual. And starting with this approach, now I lead people how I want to be led. It works with people who are like you, but it doesn't work with everybody else. And that was the first thing I had to learn, that different people need a different facet of leadership. And that was a very important learning. And I was really lucky to have that in my first leadership position.
And Silke, I'd love to hear, I think about leadership being on that journey, but I'm sure every leader makes a lot of mistakes, trial and error, and that's how we grow, that's how we develop. What were some of the places you failed or you were challenged in leadership?
Well, where I failed, I mean, there are a lot of small mistakes that you do basically every day, and you have to get over it fast, because if you stick to them too long, then you don't continue, you don't progress. I would say I did some mistakes in who I put in which position. Now you introduced me so nicely that I'm really good in putting the right people, but being good in putting the right people on the right places comes with the learning that you do over the years. And I did some mistakes in the beginning. And what I did there, I investigated thoroughly, why did I do that mistake? And quite frankly, I know maybe it's a little bit simple, but whenever I decided against my gut feeling, it was wrong. So that gave me a lot of confidence in trusting my instincts when choosing people. And where I was really challenged, I would say, was COVID, obviously. I was in a very, very big company, BSH Home Appliances. That was 42 factories around the globe, a highly interdependent supply chain, and basically a demand coming from 0 to 120% utilization of the factories. That was an incredibly challenging time, I would say. And of course, you don't do everything right in that time. But I would say, as a leader, it's important that you accept that you're not always right. If you take 80% of right decisions, that's already quite good, because you took the decisions.
There's so many things I want to jump into. First, one of the things you said, I love the example of COVID. I'll pick that up in a sec. But you also talked about where you trust your gut and where you didn't listen to your gut. So tell me a little bit about gut decisions, because we, a lot of times in decision making, we think it's head, but I hear this more and more that, it is a gut decision as well. How do you decide on what the right decision is? What plays a role for you?
I think most people confuse gut feeling decisions with non-information based decisions, and that's not true. My belief is quite simple. I think your brain is like your laptop on your desk as regards capacity, and your gut is quantum computing, basically. I think your subconsciousness just digests much more information and has much more experiences and those small details of impressions at hand, that in the end, it's a decision based on much more information that you have consciously in your brain. That's my explanation model. It's not very, very scientific, obviously. But gut decision doesn't mean that I'm not relying on facts and figures. but there is more information than only facts and figures. And that's why I would say, of course, I look at business cases, I look at informations, but having started as a, let's say, in the typical close to board assistant positions, I know how easy it is to shape business cases, let's put it like that, and to shape data and information in a way to lead to certain decisions. And that's why, for me, it always has to be a summary of facts and figures and your gut feeling to come to the right decision. And the more it's about people, the more it's about gut feeling. The more it's about technology, the more it's about facts and figures. And that's how I decide. Facts and figures when it's technical decisions, 100% gut if it's people.
Yeah, really interesting. I love that you said that your, gut decision is not, it's not a data, it's not uninformed by data.
Yes,
it is
exactly.
informed with data. So it's not just an impulsive, it's grounded. But how do you, so a little bit when I hear gut, it's like I'm tapping into something, an intuition, an inner knowledge, a wisdom within me. What would you call a gut? What would you call that energy that you're tapping into? I'm asking very hard questions. I know.
I'm trying to find the right name for it. For me, it's not, you always talk about subconscious and conscious. For me, it's more not a subconscious, it's a upconscious. It's a broader view. It's a more holistic view. I think that's it. It's a more holistic energy and view than just your brain gives you.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because part of my work recently talks a lot about conscious leadership. And I think part of that is how connected we are to our conscious and subconscious minds. And some of the decisions that we take, I think a lot of leaders I see who are very well tuned into being self-aware and self-reflective, they bring a different energy there into leadership. I'd love to ask you about how you see that. How important is self-awareness or self-reflection in leadership?
I said in the beginning that leadership is something individual, and that automatically implies that you have to know people in order to choose the right leadership for them. And the first person you should know is yourself. How can you know others if you're not able to analyze, to know, to reflect on yourself? And that's why when people ask me how to start into leadership, is understand yourself, understand your own values, understand your own beliefs, understand your own flaws, your dark sides, your bright sides, your strengths, your weaknesses, because that's also very good training in order to understand others, and also in order to design relationships with others. It's how do you want to build a bridge, and you're one bridgehead and you don't know which height it is, how it's shaped, what it is able to carry. So you really need to first know yourself in order to lead others. That's my personal belief.
Yeah, and how do you do that in leadership? I mean,
I think, well, I think nowadays the leadership generations now are really lucky, because now it's en vogue to have a coach, to dive into your values, to go into leadership, to be emotional. I think for the generations before us, it has been much more difficult. Because if you would talk about weaknesses, or if you would look into emotions, it would have been confused with weakness. Nowadays, you're allowed to do that. And if you don't, you really miss something. So it should be part of your work to self-reflect, to get feedback, to understand how you work, how to develop, why do you want to change something, what do you want to keep, and to do that in a continuous process.
Yeah, I love that you say that, Zilke. Thank you for that. I mean, the fact that the world has changed, leadership has changed. We have these things more and more at our fingertips. Let's use them and let's shape this new leadership narrative. In an ideal world, if you had this magic wand and you could change leadership to make it anything, what would you change in leadership?
I would make it more people focused, and I would make it more playful. I think, yeah, I would make it more playful. Because maybe I'm just a little bit fed up of all this serious C-level. This is how you need to behave. This is how you need to dress, and yeah, it's changing a lot in the last 10 years. It changed a lot, but a little bit more playfulness, a little bit more lightness, and that doesn't mean not being responsible, not being serious, but you don't need to be that serious, gray suit, tie wearing person all the time.
And playfulness is very important. It actually connects to creativity and curiosity, and that connects to innovation. So we need spaces like that. So I'm going to give you another challenging question. What
Don't
do you
need
do?
challenging question for me.
I know, it's so much fun.
We'll talk about that next time we meet.
So tell me, how do you bring playfulness into your leadership?
Well, of course, I try to always add some possibilities to meet outside of the typical work environment, but that's basically that everybody does. But then I think I laugh a lot. That helps. I'm making jokes. I'm always trying to find the right level of not seriousness for the environment I'm in. But I always try to spice it up a little bit to test the waters, to just look how you can push people out of their comfort zone in a playful way, where it doesn't really matter, where it doesn't really hurt, where you can just try new things. And that's fun. It's fun. But obviously, you're also exposing yourself, because if you jump on stage and you do something nobody did in a company, people can be really impressed, or people can look at you like, did you really do that? I mean, we had a party to celebrate the 1000th engine assembly, and I started singing. And
without preparing anyone, you mean?
Yeah, without preparing everyone. And I'm really bad in singing, so I'm not a good singer. And those are the moments where people look at you like, oh, did you really do it? And obviously you get mixed feedback. That's normal.
Oh, I can see the playfulness in you. And I mean, your eyes are just sparkling with mischief, Silke. Please don't put that light out. That is a beautiful part of you, truly. And I think I'm so glad you brought this word playfulness, because leadership needs that. And I also think when we are encouraging the new generations, the next generations to come, and I think that's also important to set that as role models for them. Going to a more serious discussion. I know part of our self-awareness and part of the journey, there's so much about looking after oneself. Leadership is a heavy responsibility. What do you do to look after yourself? How do you manage your well-being?
Well, first, let me say that I'm not a very good role model in that. I should have done more in the last years, but I would say since 2 years, I'm really looking into that. I think it's really important to acknowledge that also when you become older, and that's part of, if you come to senior positions, usually you are a little bit older. You really need to take care of your physical well-being. That's the first thing. That's the base. You really have to do your checkups. You really look at your nutrition. you really need to do everything that your doctor tells you all the time. That's the first thing. But the next thing is also to find your sweet spot of energy balance. And that means for me, you have to identify what takes energy from you and what gives you energy, and to consciously balance those. Not every day, maybe not every week, maybe not every month, but I think it's really dangerous to have more than 1 year where you get much more energy out of your system than you can get into your system. And what I'm really trying to do is to balance those sources of energy with those, how do you call it, dark holes where your energy vanishes into, and to do that very consciously. And I'm still not very good at it, but that's basically, I think, what you really need to do for your emotional well-being. And then I think I'm very lucky because I'm very emotional, and I hated that. So whenever I feel really, really bad, I just need an evening alone where I can cry a lot and nobody's looking at me with my red and puffy face. And then the next morning I feel better. And I think it's really important to accept when you have such emotions and to let them out and then to continue. If you really try to push them down, then you create that really, really poisonous atmosphere where a burnout comes from.
Yeah, thank you. You touched on some really, really important points. We sometimes think emotions don't have space in leadership, but they do. It's part of our life. And you just normalized it so well by saying, I'm an emotional person. Thank you for being vulnerable with us, sharing that. And there are days where we all have bad days, and there are days we might want to curl up on a couch and cry our eyes out or eat a lot of ice cream. For me, it's probably chocolate. I have days like that too. I have a cup of tea and that chocolate, which I said I'm never going to eat, I bring that out and I just go through the whole bar. Not good. But that is important. There are days like that. You talked about energy, things that give you energy and things that take your energy. What is that? Is it a list for you? Do you design a list? How do you know that? Because a lot of people I find don't know. They don't know what saps energy, what gives you energy. How do you find that?
I think you really have to consciously think about that and feel into that, because also people ask me sometimes, your job must be really stressful, and those questions help me to think about those topics, because actually it's not my job stressing me. It's usually the combination of issues in your private life, issues in your relationships, issues in your job that sum up to a pile that gets too much energy out of your system. And if you don't really think about it, and yes, it helps to write it down, what's on the plus side and what's on the minus side, it's really difficult to deal with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's also things where you think, oh no, this friends are giving me energy, and then you think, oh no, hang a second, this friend gives me energy, this friend takes energy.
Yeah.
And then you maybe at least for a certain period of time, you need to say, okay, I'm not meeting this person that often.
Yeah.
I don't have the energy left for that person.
Yeah. And I do realize, Silke, for us, as we age, as we become more experienced, we talk about white hair, but more experience.
I have it.
I realize we become much more selective and
Yes.
much more conscious of how our energy is being used and who takes it, who gives us energy. So
Definitely.
I think that's a very wise, part of the experience of life that teaches us that. I realize we're very limited on time. I'd love to focus just for a few minutes on your role as a board member.
Mm-hmm.
And, why is it important for women to be on an executive board? Maybe that question is coming from, I see so few women there, and we want more we want to have more women represented on a board level. Why is that important in your opinion?
I think you have to distinguish between why is it important for the board member, that in case for me, and for society. And I think for the board member, it's quite simple. If you really want to be on top of the power pyramid, you should be in a board and be in a powerful position. For society, I think even if the quota doesn't have this drizzle down effect that everybody wanted it to have, it's still a very, very strong role model. I get that feedback from a lot of young women in my organization, but also that I meet at university or network events. They tell me it's so good to see a woman on the board because then I know it's possible. And it's also a little bit a symbol for change. Not that all women on boards really contribute to change, but they're a symbol. And I think that's truly important. And it's the most obvious representation of diversity. I think diversity is much more than just gender, but it's a visual diversity.
Silke, thank you for that. I love that you also said role models. I think that's so important. The more women we see in these positions, they are a voice, they are a representation. And so I think that's very important. And as you said, it's having a seat at the table of making change and having impact. I think I have two final questions for you. One is, what advice would you give aspiring leaders, either those who aspire to be on a board or aspire to come into leadership? What tips would you give them?
First thing is know yourself. Focus on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. And look for allies. And then obviously don't forget to perform, because I believe that should be the basis of success.
Beautiful, wise words. Thank you. And then my last question, of course, is, because you're an engineer, I have to ask you this question, right? So if leadership were something about an engine, what would it be?
An engine. In an engine, it would be the spark. If it's an engine still with fuel and proper ignition, it should be the spark. If it's a car, it's the wiring harness connecting everything.
You told me what this was, but I don't remember what wiry harness.
All the cables in the car, without them, nothing works.
Okay, I like, actually both of them are good. I was going to say I like the spark because I understand it, but it's like the spark, it's what ignites everything to move forward.
Emotion.
Yeah. Somehow it's both of them, because you need the spark and then you need it to like transfer down into everywhere. Right? Beautiful.
Exactly.
Silke, thank you. I am so grateful for your words of wisdom and your time and your playfulness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was really nice to talk to you as always.